In 25 years, when someone asks what life was like during the COVID lockdowns, how will you respond? It's when I was able to start working from home in the job that couldn't be done remotely, according to management. COVID sparked something in me, and I've been on fire ever since. I started mowing lawns out of the trunk of my '03 Accord, then taught myself how to climb and remove trees properly. Now I've got a big truck, a trailer, and a ton of equipment. Before all this, I was an alcoholic server/bartender, super depressed. Now 2 of my teenage kids live with me, and I'm in the best shape of my life. I'll start with, the great toilet paper shortage of the 20s. I was essential, so I had to go work. Girlfriend of a couple of years moved in with me a few months prior to lockdowns. The ensuing months/years of being around her all the time made us realize that we were pretty much made for each other. Now married with twins on the way. Rest of lockdown was shit though. I was a so-called essential worker, here meaning I worked at Home Depot, and every rich motherfucker in 100 miles came in giggling about how they're so excited to be doing home renovations with all the free time they have right now, and, we know we're not supposed to go out, but we're just so bored at home. Meanwhile, my workload went up tenfold overnight. I went home every day sore and exhausted while corporate refused to hire more employees. I didn't recover from the burnout for a few years. It was awful. Lost many close friends in Verdansk many times. Well, I was a frontline medic during that time, so I will get something of a 1,000-yard stare, honestly. It was an intense time. Alcoholism. COVID taught me that the people who work the hardest and care the most will always be taken advantage of. I'll probably say it felt like living in a weird time loop. Every day was the same, but also somehow completely different. It was a mix of baking bread, Zoom calls, and trying to stay sane while the world felt like it was falling apart. Definitely a time nobody will forget. I've literally made jokes about this. Grandpa, what did you do in ___? I still can't believe I survived to tell a tale I don't actually want to tell. Pushed. I was living that COVID lifestyle years before it became trendy. It certainly made me well aware of my privilege. Some people were going through absolute hell, but we were relatively unscathed, bar the bizarre chaos unfolding. No planes in the sky, no cars on the road. Some moments were very peaceful. People forgot how to drive. Taking an allowed trip to the shop, I noticed people stopped giving a shit about how well they were driving. 1 hour outside exercise a day. The rule of 6. Continually changing rules. Banging pots and pans. An utterly inept and corrupt government. It's strange to see social distance markers in stores and public spaces now, faded and forgotten about. I'm going to show them Inside by Bo Burnham. It was strange, so much anxiety, yet oddly peaceful at times. I feel really fortunate that I had a stable work-from-home job and a house with a nice outdoor space. I worked in retail, biggest supermarket in the region. First people were cautious and friendly. 2 weeks and shelves were empty and people were pissed. Every other idiot started discussing the rules and COVID as a whole. We even had fights happen regularly, mostly because of deniers getting into other people's business. That pissy behavior lasted till today. COVID killed a lot of people, but it also killed a lot of decency in the people. A test run of how badly this country would handle a severe crisis. We know that the people will turn on themselves, we know there will be hoarding, and we know that science and reason will be enemies. Could have been a time of unification and strength. Instead, it was the opposite, and frankly, we're lucky it was mostly inconvenient to most Americans. People got extremely stupid, extremely fast. I'm not going through all these comments. As a nurse who worked a COVID unit from the time it hit the US, and for 2 years I didn't get the lockdown. I got the PTSD. Well, I live in Sweden, so pretty much as usual, with the exception of hand sanitizers everywhere and sneeze guards in front of store checkouts grinning face with sweat. Our government shoved 1 million normals into an active volcano while scrambling to send blank checks to wealthy individuals who already could have retired at any given moment. under the knowingly insincere guise of helping small businesses who got shafted. All pocketed for personal use. All blindly forgiven by both the previous and current administrations. And if when those wealthy folks got COVID, it was code red and we gave them real health care, experimental drugs, etc. to keep them alive. Oh, and tons of people pretended and still pretend that we were under China-style lockdowns because Applebee's switched to pickup only for like 2 weeks. LMAO, one of the most unserious and faith-losing periods that I've experienced living in the US for 30-plus years. Lonely. I had started a new school the day of the lockdown. I had to leave early from that day, even because I had appendicitis. It was surreal. All the doctors and nurses were wearing trash bags, and the guys in the ambulance were wearing actual gas masks. We asked. Everyone was freaked out. During COVID, my life didn't really change at all. I was an essential worker in the southeast of the US. So really the only thing that changed was the lack of traffic in my city during my commute time. It was the greatest transfer of wealth to the top 1% ever. I would think all you'd need to say is we were not all in this together. It was the best year I had with my dog's light skin on emoji modifier. Essential worked right through it. Weird and eye-opening. I saw on large scale just how full of shit everyone is, and that's across the board, not supporting any side of any issue. I had some strange realization that the only reason I watched professional sports was because I always watched professional sports. Once COVID happened and the leagues halted, I realized I didn't really need to watch millionaires playing children's games. I got outdoors and came to an understanding that media, for the most part, is just a cycle of outrage and fear in order to keep people hooked for consumption purposes. Thanks, but I'll be fishing as the world burns, and what common household item in my cabinet might kill me. I've always worked from home and found it lonely. Sitting in conference calls where someone dialed in, but I couldn't really interact. Office events I wasn't a part of, that sort of thing. So for me, it got better. My family was home all the time, which was nice. No running around bringing kids to activities or picking them up from school, and everyone started to use Teams and Slack to communicate and kept on doing it. I'm one of the lucky ones who remembers it as a nice time. I mean, day to day, personally, I was not enjoying the death, Trump's insanity, the insanity of his followers, or knowing that a lot of people were in fact having a much worse time. That's when it was clear that as a nation, we were very dysfunctional. I remember going into a grocery store wearing a mask. A man muttered sheep when he saw me. I responded, "Oh, this?" as I pointed to my mask. "This isn't for COVID. I have the flu and don't want to give it to anyone." He sincerely thanked me for my consideration. Destroyed my life at the start. Got COVID that led to complications. Went from being a black belt who was super fit to having to teach myself to walk again. Can't teach martial arts anymore, and I can't fight. On a plus side, I now have a legal prescription for cannabis in the UK. I've taken up other hobbies to keep myself occupied, and I've cut out all the selfish people in my life. I made an absolute ton of money delivering pizzas on empty streets. Mostly surreal. I worked the whole time, keeping assholes who denied its existence alive, all while being threatened by their families. Good times. I would talk to him about how difficult it was not being able to say goodbye to loved ones because of that, but also about the importance of personal care and habits which we were not used to in order to avoid contagions. Bro, my life didn't change during the pandemic and the lockdowns. I was barely leaving my house anyway. I was a physician in an urgent care for a large group practice. All potentially infectious patients went to us. It was a nightmare. We were only allowed 1 mask a week. The patients did not get masks. We could not test patients for COVID unless they were hospitalized because too few test kits. No outpatient treatments available. I work in healthcare, and it was pure hell. It's interesting how different the experience was for everyone. Some found peace, some found chaos, but I think we all felt some kind of shift.